This one's fun. Nerdiness, Allman Brothers style, with my dude, Jeff Kollath. Jeff and I go back almost 20 years now, in first meeting in the history of museum field where we both make our living. But we are also deep Allman Brother and music nerds. And Jeff reached out to me and said, "Hey, I want to talk about a couple things." And I said, "Well, shit, let's record it and do a show." So there's conversations from the Crossroads with a music historian, raconteur. Jeff is one of those guys you want on your trivia team. He's also one of those guys you just enjoy sitting with and talking. He asks great questions, poses great points. You'll hear it all here.
So if I have to blow my nose occasionally, I apologize for that.
Well, I was sitting there going, damn, because, I had the flu. Legit.
Oh, did you?
The legit flu. Yes, everybody in the house got it. Except Mama. Thank God.
The one person that you can't the one who can't get it.
She and mainly because she is the most miserable sick person on the face of the earth, and she doesn't deny it. But Ryan took it home with her to Phoenix. Mm-hmm. Tyler got it. I got it. I'm going to say thank God for Tamiflu and the flu shot, which I had before that. Like I lived okay.
I've talked about this with a handful of people over the years, but like growing up, I only remember my dad getting sick, or missing work twice because of illness, and it was and when he did get sick, it was like, holy shit, Dad's sick. And so I did the one time I remember, and I'll never forget it. He got a stomach bug and was home for 2 days. And I remember coming home from school and he was laying on the couch, and we had our first VCR was a Betamax.
So was ours.
So he had recorded a bunch of NASCAR races and things on beta, and the thing still worked, but we didn't use it. And I remember I came home and he was watching the 1985 Southern 500, on the Betamax, laying on the couch. And the sick bin was this orange plastic thing that I'm pretty sure my mom bathed me in when I was a baby. And so it was the Betamax, Dad on the couch, and the orange bin. I was like, oh man, this is serious.
Dad's sick.
Dad's sick. But he never missed work, he never spent the day in bed because he felt bad. It just wasn't the MO.
Superman kind of weird Superman mentality without doing it. Yes, absolutely. That whole just going to keep going. I got a little tickle in my throat,
I'm going to go to work and cough on everybody, but I be at work.
That is, part of it. Turns out, I missed Jack Pearson on Saturday here, played an hour-long set at 3rd and Lindsley, and I had tickets, cool. But I had the flu. And turns out, though, I think I was probably no longer contagious, because after 24 hours on Tamiflu, you're no longer shedding virus.
You're cleared out.
Yeah, but I was like, I don't want to take a chance. That could kill Jack.
Yeah. True. Yes, it could.
I will say he was standing on stage, and when I saw him, I don't know if it's December or late November, but one of those two, he sat down the entire time and walked to the stage with a cane. That was not what I saw in some videos there. So,
in terms of age, Warren is 65 or something like that. So is Jack older than Warren?
A little bit. I think he's mid. He was born in the late 50s, mid to late 50s.
Okay.
Maybe even early 50s. Maybe he's closer to 70.
There was clips coming around from the Mule New Year's stuff, which I watched, and it didn't. I mean, it's just so clean. And then Matt's not even really in the band anymore. And so it's just kind of a Warren Haynes band thing. It sounds just so sanitary. But they also showed the clip of them on Conan before they played at the New Year's Eve gig at Roseland. So was that 95 when they're all wearing
Yes,
like
95. Yes.
wearing this, Warren's like 4 black t-shirts
Yeah, he's got
phase, which we've
the
talked about. The
Xanax 25 shirt.
Xanax 25 shirt. It's like, man, those guys, I mean, they talk about, we got long hair, we got beards, we're wearing black t-shirts, and we're just gonna play as loud as humanly possible. I mean, that shit was so good. I know it wasn't your thing, but that
No,
shit
no,
was
it will
good.
actually. So that's the thing. It absolutely was. What was the deal was though, and is the first time I saw them. I mean, it was 94 Horde tour, second stage. I found the playbill. It was listed as Warren Haynes Band's second stage.
Oh.
Wasn't even the Mule. And then the Allman Brothers were the headliners that year, and they didn't play that show. And I think because Fiddler's Green had a really tight curfew, and they're like, well, we can't get our 3-hour guarantee on stage. That's the only thing I'm guessing. They never announced it. But I went over there expecting Jessica, and I got Left Coast Groovies. and it was like a sledgehammer. And I didn't, for it, it was big and ugly. And, it wasn't Jessica, it wasn't Liz Reed, it wasn't even Whipping Post. It was something altogether different. Once I heard it live and then realized what I was getting into each time I saw them, I tracked that original band. I mean, I don't know. I probably saw them 4 times, maybe half a dozen up to that in that little window of time that, 97, 98, 'cause I didn't see them in 99. The last time I saw Woody was 98. Like they were playing Life Before Insanity. They played Life Before Insanity at that show. They played Devil Likes It Slow at that show. A ripping version of Lively Up Yourself. In Florida, like you play anything Marley. And then nobody was doing that at that time. Like nobody had thrown in and then turns out Derek Trucks band was also doing Lively Up Yourself. They came around same venue and had that song in their repertoire. They were that OG band, and it has never been the same for me since Alan Woody died. The government Mule. I mean, there are some songs that we saw him 10 years ago.
Something like that, yeah.
And you were like, hey man, the Mule's playing. And I was like, eh. And then you were like, come on, Bob. And I was like, yeah, what am I doing here? This is stupid. Yes, of course.
Your mantra of just buy the tickets has come up in conversation a lot lately with a friend who is following the Ole Miss playoff run. And he bought a plane ticket to Phoenix and then got canceled it and then bought a ticket to Miami, hedging his bets for the Natty. And then he saw the ticket prices for Phoenix were about like $150 to get in the door, and the ticket prices for the Natty are like $2,200 or something like that on Vivid. So he bought another ticket to Phoenix and he leaves tomorrow morning. And I told him what you said. It's like, it hurts in the short term, but you never regret going.
The one, sort of regret I have on those whole things is I did not go see the Gators win their first national championship against Florida State in New Orleans. Like I was an adult. I was not like go to New Orleans and rock your, whatever. But that was such a, thing. But I did go to the national championship celebration, which I think it was one of the first ever where a team like did that. And now everybody does it, and they should host a big ass thing celebrating national championships. But it wasn't like a super common thing that I recall when Spurrier said, no, we're going to go to Gainesville. And I bet it was, I don't know, 40, 50,000 people. And he got up there on thing and said, well, I just want to lead y'all in a cheer. We're number one. We're number, he was such an awesome like leader for your team, like just, and he took them, from nothing to that. So I'm proud of your friend for doing that. I'm happy that you passed on the wisdom, because
I did.
You just don't regret. You're never going to go back and say, I wish I hadn't had that experience.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's the joke in our house is I have better recollection of the records I didn't buy than the records I have bought. I can tell you, top 5 records Jeff has not bought, and then think about it. There's two in particular, but like I think about so there's a little store, and so I'm from outside, Madison, so I'm in Wanakee, and there's a town about half hour north called Baraboo, which is listed in Hank Snow. I've Been Everywhere, by the way.
Shout out.
And that's where the Circus World Museum is, and that's where the Ringling Brothers had the elephants and all their animals for a number of years. Anyway, and the Great Circus Train was based there. Anyway, on the downtown square, Courthouse Square there is awesome. Like there's all kinds of cool little shops and bars and restaurants, and it's very happening. So we always go up there around the holidays when we're home. And, I had gone to the record store once before and got a couple really cool records for cheap. And I was like, I got to go back. And that the store has kind of fallen into the trap of, oh, this is what this record's worth. Well, then I'm going to charge that worth. And then I'm going to charge that, as opposed to, let's just sell these things and get them out the door. But they clearly have a lot of turnover, because the stuff, they keep the good ones, behind the counter. Well, 2 years ago, Christmas, go in there looking around, and there's 2 records. There's Bob Seger Back in 72, which is very hard to find. Seger records are actually the early ones are pretty difficult to find on, but especially that one. And then a US pressing of Can's Ij Bamyasi record with the green beans on the cover, which you never see. Like, you never see it. And it was $100. And it was like, man, I've never spent that much on a record. I don't know. And like looked at it and everything looked good and blah, blah, blah. And then like, of course, I did the thing where I thought about it and I put it back, walked around, and I was like, I can't do it. And then like the next day was Christmas Eve. And I was like, what did I do? And I was like, I got to call these people. I got to go back. Well, I never went back. I think it snowed or something. So we were kind of stuck and we didn't go anywhere. And like, I think about that probably like every other week, if not more, because I'm never going to see that record again. What did I spend that $100 on? It's not like I spent it on something substantive. I bought more records that I probably are in the back room and I don't listen to. So it's just so stupid. Like, yeah, it's stupid. And so that from that point is like, yes, just buy the tickets, but also within reason, just buy the record. Like, just buy it.
Yeah, the piece I'll say on the just buy the record thing is I've already been through my parents' clutter. I lost my parents a decade ago. So when my shelves fell off my wall and my basement flooded, and I realized how much shit I had begun accumulating, including, my record collection went from, a couple hundred from high school to like it quadrupled just because of, I mean, it was a bit of a frenzy, a lot of fun to get back in that game. And I'm sitting here staring at stacks of them right now that still have no home because I have to redo this whole space. And it's quick note on that. I went when I told you I went this summer to the church studio. We went to Tulsa, bro. Put Tulsa on your, like, at some point in my life, make a music history quest. The only thing I didn't do was, and I should have, was Kane's Ballroom.
Oh yeah.
It didn't sort of all peak in. Plus, we wanted to go to Oklahoma City and see the memorial. But backing up, the church studio. Shit, lost my train of thought. We were saying records. Oh, I mean, bro, it's a really killer renovation project that they have engaged in there. It's a beautiful space, and it's a studio. It's not a museum. It's a museum at a working studio, which of course is a tough business to be in right now.
Well, it helps when the lady that owns it this is her life's work.
And that's point.
She's done well for herself. And she's awesome.
Yes.
I've met
what
her,
I was just fixing to say.
Teresa
Knox.
She'd been to Memphis a handful of times because she got real tight with Don Nix. And she was real sweet to Don and real kind to Don. So we became friends around that. And so, anybody that's a friend of Don is somebody that you should probably, because if you can put up with Don, you got to be a pretty patient and special individual. May he rest in peace. But
I met her when we were there, and she has this is the story. Actually, so funny you bring her up, serendipity. She has a beautiful coffee table book, and it was $50. And I was, it took everything in me. I'm standing there with Ryan, 23-year-old Ryan, moving her across country in a little tiny Hyundai Tucson Hyundai Santa Fe, like from a decade ago, right? And I was like, I can't add another coffee table book that she's going to have to get rid of one day, And I hate that because I do love those things, and I am going to go back and buy her book. I mean, there's no doubt. I sent her a note when I came back. I don't know if I sent her a copy of Play All Night. I hope I did, but I should just tell you, why don't you just tell her, hey man, my friend Bob, ... you should have him come out and do a book talk. Thank you. Yeah.
Sure.
Good people. I agree, Jeff. And, we both have a real discerning eye for, what works in those spaces, right? And certainly what doesn't, Hank Williams Museum in Mobile maybe is one example, one such example. But I loved the entire thing, how they did it. That little archive room. You haven't been there, right?
No, I think I've only been to Tulsa once, and that was to see Bruce. And we went, all we really had time to go do was the Dylan, which was awesome. So
shoot, that one was badass. That Dylan one, the way that they did the lyric, was that in there at that point? Yeah. The way that they did it with multiple songs throughout. As a guy who has studied musicians, songwriting, arrangement, and struggled to do likewise, like to put words on paper and melodies to chord progressions and stuff from playing. Seeing that opened so many eyes, so many doors to me. And that there's a quote Greg Allman says, and it sounds kind of dumb, but it is super profound. There are as many ways to write songs as there are songs. and right. So you can do the Dylan, kind of word vomit sort of screeds, right? You can be Patterson Hood, where you're just literally writing down day-to-day observations that you have and, doing it, or Cooley, where you can spend a ton of time working on words and say these, super profound things that surrender under protest or something like that. Right. Or Isbell or the Beatles or, but there are as many ways to write songs as there are songs. And that really struck me when I went, and then the Woody Guthrie Center, which, is right next door there in Tulsa. And I'm glad we're talking about this. Two museum history, music nerds talking museum history, music shop, two archives, which are, paper based, two-dimensional based, not necessarily the most exciting thing to put on display. The archival field in and of itself, unlike our side, the museum public history side, is not about interpreting the archival objects. It's about sort of preserving, making them available. So even having any of the sort of interpretation is a big change from,
Mm-hmm.
you know, a lot of things. On the Woody Guthrie side, of course, there's a lot of melodies that are lost, and they have made, you know, great effort to get his lyrics into the hands of, you know, first Wilco and Billy Bragg and, you know, Son of Bull, you know, Jay Ferrer and all these things. And so it was neat to see that in those two contexts with the songwriting of those two geniuses, you know, Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie. I was really, and then of course the church, like I said, that whole visit was like, talk about scratch an itch. You know,
it's great. And they, the thing about Dylan, but for me was everything was done so simply and so well that it was and clean and pleasing to be in, and there was no extra noise per se that distracted you from what they wanted you to kind of focus on and do. It was about the stuff. It was about the content of the stuff. And that's what sort of guided you through that process. I thought the way they displayed the things, some of that stuff was really, you know, unique and interesting. Yeah, it just was like, oh, we're celebrating an archive, and they did, and they did it remarkably well. And again, even the intro film, which typically I abhor intro films, but like that one was sort of like, I'm in this really great space where they have like filing cabinets and desks and writing stuff and archival boxes that like, oh, by the way, this is why you're here. We have all this stuff. And so that was, I really liked it. It was so well thought out. And I hope, and I know Bob approves, and, you know.
Yeah, and that's a great that was a great take. That intro films are always kind of tough, and that was a particularly good one. Well,
it made sense for like it talking about doing a museum from scratch, but it's like it locks you into the reason why you're there. You know, this isn't just some random thing that we're just doing here in the middle of Tulsa. It is a little random that his stuff ended up there.
Yeah.
But
it is because of Tulsa. That's why, you know, because of Tulsa's, you know, history and, you know, yeah, exactly.
So I just think it wasn't about, you know, if it would have been ended up, say, at Minnesota Historical Society or University of Minnesota Archives or something like that, and then they decided to do it, it wouldn't be about the collection. It would be about Bob Dylan's Minnesota or something like that. And like growing up in Hibbing, being the son of a Jewish hardware store owner and blah, blah, blah. Like that stuff's great. And they talk about that in Tulsa, but the focus is the stuff. And so that's what I liked. It was sort of like, sometimes if you're going to do a museum or an exhibit that is about the stuff, it helps to have it be somewhere where you have to think about, well, why is this here?
It's the answer to all the ills.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the what do they say in Stoicism? And it's true. The obstacle is the way. Why are you here? You're here because of this. And you know, I think the piece that you're bringing up, which is often funny. You know, we've been on the idealist cynic kick for a long time between the two of us, but the passion, it can come out in a way that says this stuff matters, you know, like, and it doesn't have to hit you over the head with the lasers and, you know, in a wow intro film. You know, you've seen the one in Springfield at Lincoln. Yeah. I mean, and of course, that sort of stuff is super expensive to maintain. And then, you know, as soon as everybody's been through it, then what? Do I have to do this again? Like I did this, you know? I will say on that tip, I'm going to segue because, you know, I went Monday to the Country Music Hall of Fame, and it was just, hey, I don't know if it's only been, I think it's probably been about 18 months. So they had I think the California exhibit was still in there.
The Bakersfield.
Yeah. So, of course, I'm going to go in and check out the Muscle Shoals exhibit. They have a dolly exhibit, which was incredible. On the when you get off the elevator, go to the left. Those little temporary space, really great little dolly exhibit. I should find a picture somewhere. There's an album cover with her and
her and Porter.
No, put a pin in it. We're going to talk about the 80s in just a second. So, let's bring this one back up, and I'll see if I can find the picture while we're doing it. And they have that. And a really great one of Rosanne Cash. Back, kind of, when you walk in. When's the last time you were there? Recently, like you aware of the space though?
Yeah. 2 years ago when they had the Bakersfield thing up.
You walk in, you go right, and there's that whole Birth of Country Music wall on the, behind you is the open storage. Okay, behind the Birth of Country Music wall, they have opened up a gallery. On the left is I think the Taylor Swift, exhibition, education center, and then they've opened up a gallery, and they filled that with a whole bunch of Rosanne Cash stuff, and it was a really cool little exhibit, and some very cool letters from Johnny Cash to Rosanne. The kind of letters when you're like, I got to stop and put a few words on paper for my daughters, like those are the kind of things that, they're going to treasure, because reading Johnny Cash's words kind of made me feel like reading my dad. She and my dad were the exact same age at 1935. I think Johnny Cash was born in 35, but then that whole like Birth of Country Music section, as you go across, they've updated and they have added so many more artifacts and stories. Leadbelly. They got Leadbelly's pocket knife on display and his official pardon. That's just like one of many on that level, going toward Elvis's Cadillac, Then you go around, where you can genuflect, which I did, Jimmy Rogers' guitar, Mother Maybell's guitar, Bill Monroe's mandolin, Flat's banjo, Scruggs' banjo, Flat's guitar, Hank's guitar. And then go down and they had the whole Muscle Shoals exhibit, which was phenomenal. I kind of blazed through looking for the ABB content for, I just put something up on Vassar's fiddle. Oh, actually, because I just fixed that. All right, good enough stuff. They got I think I sent you the Pete Carr guitar, the Telecaster cool. that had the fuzz face in it. Another Strat that, by reading the label, sounds like it was like a house axe that Dwayne might have played. It's not the one with the black that he painted with the black pickguard and had the scorpion sticker on it. It's I think it even had a maple fretboard. And then like you continue and they have they had a huge Lainey Wilson thing going along that wall where they always have something. But then it was just all of these country music, kind of legacy stories that come spilling beyond what is up on 2, instead of kind of stopping the story with that. And that's where Vassar's fiddle was. And a guitar that Dickie gave Hank Jr. And, a couple other things here and there. But all to say, when you come to town, Tyler was pretty entranced. It was, she wasn't rushing around, I was pretty, I actually stopped and wrote a letter to Kyle Young just saying, man, I just want to say you are a rock star. Because what did they spend? A couple $1 million on that out of the however much hundreds of millions they're,
Yeah. And they're doing well.
And that guy, I think he started the front desk of the old one on, I think it was front desk of the old one on Music Row, the one that's long gone. He birthed that thing. And then when they built the convention center, he was wise enough, strategic enough, and had a board that backed him to build that entire hotel complex, like right along there, bring Hatch show prints in. And yeah, you gotta like a leader, and ultimately it's up to the leader to make this that has allowed that museum to start showing off a lot more of what it's got. It's cool.
They and now they're gonna get a new convention center in like Elon's tunnel to the airport.
We're getting a new convention center.
I think aren't they gonna redo the convention center or expand it?
I don't know.
Everything's bigger. Everything's bigger in Nashville, Bob.
I moved here 19 years ago this week. I started my job at ASLH. And we were walking around downtown on Monday, and I said, Tyler, that building, 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 that building. None of them. I mean, we were standing, and it was like we were standing kind of across the street from the entrance to the Country Music Hall of Fame. So where you could point, even the backside of the Country Music Hall of Fame wasn't there. The entire convention center, like the city leaders set out on a vision. They embraced the Music City thing in the 90s, early 2000s, rather than running from it, and made it one of the hottest. Now Broadway is just like Duval Street or 6th Street or Bourbon Street, just Bacchanalia Nashville style.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And I'll say, like, it's the other thing, it's January, so it's pay as you wish for locals.
Oh, really?
Including you don't have to pay at all. I went ahead and paid $20 because I have paid hundreds of dollars over the years to walk into that building.
Sure.
And I thought, you know what, I will take advantage of being a local. And I think also that's a wonderful deal because, again, let the tourists foot the bill for this institution keeping its doors open. Let the locals use it. I thought that was a pretty smart move.
That's cool.
Yeah. Jeff, I did not expect to see as much new as I did. I was just kicking, and I was like, wow, shit. Okay. We have a list of things you wanted to talk about. I found that list.
Oh, good.
I found that list in an email that I had deleted. Let me pull this thing up here real quick. American Music Show. Right, let me move this over here. Can I?
Well,
move
it's
that?
all related to your missives that you're posting and sending out to the world, and so
into the void.
And it's funny because usually when you put something up, I will say 85 to 90% of the time, I'm like, I totally agree with you, Bob. But there occasionally is time where like, it's, hyperbole Bob comes out.
You gotta hit it.
But then you did the Arista stuff. And I was like, you know what? I think I even verbalized this. I said, you know what? Bob is just trashing these records. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to listen to these things. And we're going to do Vidal Buckley style. Jeff defends the Arista years. And you know what I figured out, Bob? You can't do it. And so, yeah, we can talk about that. I think we should start with that because that's like the freshest in my mind. And so, really, so the disdain for the Arista stuff, I think, is twofold for me. One is, and some of this I blame on the band and some of this I blame on the record company. Well, actually, a lot of it I kind of blame on the band, but the record company for sure.
That's pretty much my conclusion as well.
Is that the Grateful Dead were also on this label. And the one of my biggest things I've grown to appreciate about the Dead over the years which even though I have my finite eras in which I listen to it, and it's just because what pleases my ears mostly, is you had a band that continuously added new material throughout their career, all the way up until the end. In 95, they were still playing songs that were either new or from way back that they were just playing for the first time. Unbroken Chain, coming out in 95, like all that stuff. But the sound of the band, the sound of the Dead in their live shows and in their recordings evolved with the time. So it always sounds contemporary. It never sounds old to me. And so, yes, it's weird. And, the weirdness sort of stops in 74 and then the weirdness comes back in the 80s and the 90s. But you listen to 76 is sort of like this weird bridge year where they've taken that time off. Mickey's back in the fold full time. Keith and Donna are still around, but you have all this music that they had made, this new stuff that they're bringing in, and they're completely influenced by what is happening in pop music at that time. And so they're rearranging Dancing in the Street, they're rearranging Good Lovin' around that time, all of these songs that become staples that sound new and fresh and different. And then obviously 77 and 78, which are, 77 is the year, 78, the last year with Keith and Donna. And then they released Shakedown Street Into the World. And it's like, well, Jesus, even the Grateful Dead's doing disco or whatever you want to call it. But everything sounds contemporary and it fits, but it's the intentionality behind it. And it doesn't change their process necessarily because they're still a live band, but they understood the making of records and writing of songs in that era way better than the Allman Brothers did. And I think some of that is just, well, this is my question to you. Is that because they had their breakup earlier or their break earlier than the Allman Brothers did? The break was not because of animus necessarily. It was because of they just needed some time and they had some things to work out, but they came back, you could say, argue better than ever in some ways. But does it come down to they could play that they had a dedicated fan base that was never going to leave them of a certain size when they started making this music that sounds sonically different and much more of the era as opposed to the Allmans, which seems like when they come back in 79, it's, even though Enlightened Rogues is pretty good, there's a sense of like throwing it at the wall and figuring out what sticks, but there's also this sense of like desperation. When you make things out of desperation, a lot of times you don't come up with what the intended result.
You've got, so that, all right, that's a little bit of a, let me unpack just my initial thoughts as you were talking. I didn't even write notes, but one is, of course, right, you got to compare each band to themselves instead of each other, for one, like just to be fair to the Allman Brothers. Right. I think the key question, right, is and I thought about this. So, as background for anybody listening, if we decide to put this up, which I think I will, we're rolling in a good conversation. I took an assignment for Record Time magazine. You need to write for them. I'm telling you, get your record nerds. Scott is awesome. He's an awesome editor, and it's your jam. Cheap $10, $20 records that, hey, you should listen to this. I'm gonna write about Eddie Hinton's Capricorn record for cool. Sure. So anyway, I said I would do the Arista records, and I had never listened to them before, as Jeff is saying, never. I had heard songs, I dabbled, but it was so bad for me. My best friend Troy got Hell and High Water from like BMG, for pennies, and I stole it from him because I didn't want him to listen to it. I didn't want him to know how bad the Allman Brothers had become. Right. So I wrote this 3,000 word essay that I'm actually quite proud of. And he asked me, Scott, one of the things Scott asked me to do was to put the whole thing a little bit in better context. So how did it get even to this point in the first place, much less how did we get to the two Arista records, much less the actual two Arista records, much less Brothers of the Road, like this, right? And so I know I texted you and I said, when's the last time you've listened to him? You're like, it's been a while. And so, I mean, I went through, I took notes as I wrote. I put the assignment off so long. I was like, okay, I'm going to pull out I'm going to listen to everything starting with the Allman Brothers band. So my records are a mess. Like I said, I couldn't find the record and I was like, okay, so I can't start there. All right, I'll start with Win, Lose or Draw. And that was actually a good one to, sort of begin my palate cleanse state. That is not an attempt, right, on them to sort of update any sound. That's really not what's happening in 75. And
yeah, that's a totally. I got a totally different set of comments about.
Yeah, that. Okay. So then I went to All right. What happens after that? So we've got Great Southern version 1 or 2, basically the same album twice. You got Playing Up a Storm, and then you got Sea Level. Now Sea Level is got to be one of the great. I mean, Sea Level, to me, that debut album ranks with Highway Call and Laid Back as one of the greatest side Allman Brother projects in history. That first record is so phenomenal. Greg was big on that updating sound on Playing Up a Storm. I mean, that's got some yacht rock kind of feel to it, proto yacht rock, I guess you would call it.
I mean, was that whole thing recorded in LA?
I think so.
Yeah. Because it's all like LA session people on it. So, and most of them.
Yeah. The version of like, my friend Steve calls it, you've met Steve, he calls, Greg leaves a lot of unpolished gems, One More Try, what a beautiful song. And the best version we have, the only version is that one, the Come and Go Blues version, has a real disco-y backbeat feel, Okay. I chose not to go down the Dead's success at Arista very far, just for expediency's sake, right? But it did come to mind on several cases. One is, like, how do they get away with Shakedown Street or Dancing in the Streets, the one I was really going at, like, I'm going to say that might rank up there, travesty with Rod Stewart on People Get Ready, maybe, as a cover you shouldn't do. Just let Jeff Beck play that solo. We don't need to hear Rod Stewart sing it. Okay, sorry. Forgive me, faces, for I have sinned.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Tonight's the night. Do you think I'm sexy? That's my Rod Stewart.
I know.
The Hot Pants, MTV or proto MTV, early MTV. Okay, I'm sorry. So I digress. So the Dead, yes, they did adapt, and I think there's something to be said. There's a larger issue that I don't think I want to talk. We'll have a lot of time to talk about today, but I think a lot about what kept these bands fresh, and today what keeps them fresh, right, and what caused the Allman Brothers to go stale is they stopped making those studio records in the 2000s and even in the 90s, right? It cost them the issues with Dickie too, but those, when they were back together and doing records, they just remained so vital, right? So they had kind of lost that. They were never a great studio band. Neither was the Dead. The Dead have 4 years on them. That might count for something. A little more clout. Better management that they have. I think when they reformed in '79, they all signed like a temporary contract with Walden. I don't even think there was an Allman Brothers entity. The big issue, I'll say, is artistic control. That's the piece that was my conclusion, right? Like, you can blame Mike Lawler for introducing the keytar concept to the band, or you can blame him for the synthesizer sound. But ultimately, on the first record, Greg, Dickie, JMO, and Butch all said yes to that sonic experiment.
They did.
Or didn't say no. Maybe is a better way to say that. And silence is consent in a situation like that. So Lawler and Dave Cobb were the producers, not Dave Cobb.
Dave Cobb.
Sorry. Is it Johnny Cobb? Johnny.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
It's. Oh wait, I got it. I just no. I had to buy it. So
it's in shrink wrap even.
$10. It had it's like in gorgeous condition apparently. Yeah.
Because probably got played once because the guy was like, "This is garbage.
This is never getting played."
Yeah, that's funny.
But the they had these outside producers. I just take a quick funny story, and this is a dead story too, I guess. But I talked to David Goldflee's bassist about this a couple of years ago, and he was like, "Which one was the one that was recorded at Lookout Mountain?" And I didn't remember right offhand, but I was pretty sure it was Reach for the Sky. But we were talking. He goes, "I don't know, whichever one it was. All I remember is we were up isolated on Lookout Mountain. My girlfriend wasn't there, and there was a nitrous tank with 300-foot hoses, and you could just walk all around the property and just do nitrous." So when you listen to Reach for the Sky, just brought to you by nitrous oxide and cocaine, there is no doubt, because that is a speedy record.
I wrote down sort of like five or six things about both the records, but
pause. Let me finish my thing on the disco thing.
Sorry.
Why does it work with the Dead and does not work with the Allman Brothers band? Okay.
Yes.
We will come back to talk about that maybe a little bit more, but some of it just has to do with serendipity and luck.
Mm-hmm.
They had more leverage with Clive Davis than the Allman Brothers certainly did. Why they thought Arista in 80, they had, if you just listen to Enlightened Rogues, like I'll still listen to that record once or twice a year. That's a banger. That's a good little boogie Southern rock record. That's when you got artistic control and Tom Dowd behind the boards, right? Like and Goldfleet said, he goes, there was so much optimism. Everybody was in such a good mood to be back together. So anyway, I'll tell you one real quick. The Allman Brothers fizzle out in 81, about the time the Dead really never stopped touring after they get back together, right? Why didn't they ever tour together again? And, Alan Paul basically said, I think he said it flat out in Brothers and Sisters, like they thought Greg was a narc and they didn't want to have anything to do with him.
Yeah.
And
you didn't want any narcs around the Dead in the 80s.
Yeah. And it was like, now we're, like you're banished from the kingdom, and things get patched up right after Garcia goes. And, there becomes a lot of love between the bands, but, that's another piece that I got to explore, with this was Scooter Herring. Okay. You had some questions.
Oh no.
I like them.
So what's interesting is, the band gets back together in 79. You see this sort of resurgence of Southern culture and redneck culture in mass media in the late 70s. Obviously the beginning of the decade was I forget what they call it, but like the rural apocalypse or whatever, where they canceled all the shows that had anything to do with rural America or Southern America in 70 or 71. And
Green Acres and Beverly Hillbillies and
stuff.
Yeah.
And so maybe RFD, I guess, because Andy Griffith was done by then. But you have all that happen at the beginning of the decade. You have the politicization and sort of the growing, the changes that are happening within country music.
The conservatives, and country really, really identifies itself strongly there. Yeah.
And then the Southern rock aspect, which you've talked about the Allmans, or you've talked about extensively, written about it, the Allmans not being a Southern rock band, but the rise of Southern rock with Allmans, yes, but Skynyrd, Marshall Tucker, Charlie Daniels Band, all of those offshoots that really kind of lasts and was going strong and continued to go pretty strong even up till and past the crash in October of 77. You've got Smokey and the Bandit, which is about as redneck of a movie as you can do, which is completely permeating mass culture. You have Dukes of Hazzard coming out. I think started in 79 or 80. Dallas is the biggest TV show in the world, which takes place in Texas, which is basically taking this whole notion of urban urban Southerners and urban, of incredible means. So you have all of these factors that are kind of all coming in where on paper you'd think, well, the Allman Brothers fit perfectly into this. And I forgot, Urban Cowboy, of course, is a huge movie at this time too. And Mickey Gilley, and again, the whole cosmopolitan
nature. Dolly is Rhinestone, Bethlehem Whorehouse in Texas.
Totally. All that
She's
stuff.
A massive star in this era.
All of these things are kind of happening at once. So on paper, it's pretty clear Arista and Clive Davis sees this and is like, well, these guys fit perfectly into what's going on. And I feel like they tried to put the band into that box of all of these other cultural factors that are happening at that time. The Allmans, I think you said it perfectly, don't really have a leg to stand on creatively at that moment. They're touring, but and they're playing. I mean, they played Summerfest in Milwaukee one year. They played Alpine Valley. Like they've played bigger venues, but the size of the venue continues to go trend downward at this time. And so on paper, it seems like this would work, but the band does not have the leadership, does not have the wherewithal, does not have the content or the creativity, I think, to pull it off. But they're also playing, and I listened to before we started, I listened to From the Madness of the West again. And it's like, and the thing that strikes me, and again, one of my words, pace. Why is everything played so fast on these two records? And it's like, and again, I know that's the nature of pop music at that time and getting people to dance at the club, but you're not going to dance to any of this shit in a nightclub. So it's just missing the mark, and you're forcing a band to play at a speed and a tempo that they don't play at or have never played at a sustained period of time. Like one of the reasons why I love 72 so much and some of the Dickie era stuff so much, it is a little slow at times, but it is deliberate. There is deliberate playing occurring. And there are moments where it's certainly speedy, but it's like Jessica is a perfect example. It makes sense to play it in the way that it's played, but From the Madness of the West is just like, it's like they went and said, okay, we recorded it, and now let's make it at 1.2x. So that's to me that sticks out about both these records, and I'll stop talking, is like the pace at which they're playing does not make sense, and what makes it so hard to listen to.
And I think in that regard, it is, the dynamics. Like their songs require some dynamics.
Yes.
And there's not a lot when you're at this going. Like you said, I think you said it really well, and I had not really considered it in that kind of Southern cultural zeitgeist quite as much either. I want to give you a tiny bit, like back up some context. And one thing that blows my mind, if you Google Allman Brothers, YouTube, you go YouTube, you know what comes up, right?
What, Straight from the Heart?
Gainesville Brothers of the Road, 1982.
Of course. I mean, I still have that on VHS.
I do too.
Yeah.
Millions and millions of hits. Anything with Barry Oakley probably has within the tens of thousands, right? Like,
is that because it's been on Wolfgang's Vault and MV forever?
Yeah, I mean, it's because it's easy. It was easy to like rip off, put it up on YouTube. Yeah. When the algorithm picked it up, it's why all of my work is going to Substack. Like, I'll do all this stuff elsewhere, but those are all means to an end for me. Substack is my home. I control the algorithm. Mm-hmm. I control the numbers. of my stuff. Um, so, but okay. So the worst lineup. Although I got something for you here in a second. The worst lineup, the one that never recorded a thing, background singers, guitar. I don't know if the guitar makes the appearance there, but that's the one that's shown the most. About a week before, they played a benefit gig in Palm City, Florida, Stuart, Florida, my hometown. I covered this on the Substack a couple years ago. I was doing some research and I found this Greg interview at what looked like a high school classroom free gig, and he's clear. It's middle 82. He's with the Toller Brothers doing his little tour.
Okay.
And they ask, it's from Florida, because they ask about this David Harrison story. David Harrison was a young motocross champion in my town. Palm City's out. My first job was out there at a flower farm. Hardest I've ever worked in my life. Never worked harder ever in my life. But he dove into a lake and shattered his back or neck and needed a thing. His dad was friends with one of Dickie's crew in that era, 81, 82. And the Allmans agreed to play a benefit concert in Stuart. And I know what they were making, which was 25 grand, because that was the fee that they showed up in the newspaper. Like the Allman Brothers are donating their fee for playing the concert. There's photos with the big old rebel flag out there. They're out in the pond. They're out in probably a cow field out that way, an empty field. And then it turns out they had so much cash and no cash controls, so they lost tens of thousands of dollars on this thing. It was an absolute disaster. The guy who prosecuted it was my Cub Scout leader.
Okay.
He was an assistant DA, and I only found that because I saw it in the newspaper. But all to say, you're saying about declining crowds, right? That's where I was going with this. So the band was still drawing and still kicking ass live. They were way too speedy. That's going to be a drug thing, right? But they were just, live, if it was just them and not the other stuff, were very good. And people brag about that all the time. But getting to the records, their sound doesn't adapt well. What they do, I think I heard you and Harvey say at one time, one of one. It's the same with the Grateful Dead, right? Like their own brew, their own mix does not translate well to an attempt to update sound. Or in this case, didn't. Failed miserably. And if you listen to any of the recordings of them in this, mid 80s era, Greg's stuff does not sound good with these arrangements and these, I liberated the Never Knew How Much video from One More Try song because it wasn't out there. And I was like, I can't have people saying, well, that's a great song. It's a good song. I will agree. But ain't nothing great about what that said. I think that's on this piece of shit.
Yeah, it's on Brothers on the Road. Road. So,
by the way, Southern Rock. I told you, Southern Rock.
There you go.
Just real quick for the record, this album is titled in honor of all American musicians who have made Southern rock a traditional art form in American music. The Allman Brothers themselves, this one's going up on the socials. The Allman Brothers themselves called themselves Southern rock.
There you go.
Yep.
Yes, and it's interesting because they if they could have just held on. And I think this is where, I think about formative years of that shape you, and you don't really know they're shaping you until it happens, is mid 80s MTV. It was so profound, not just because of the pop music necessarily at that time, but you had all of these blues musicians and rock musicians from the 60s and 70s contemporizing their look and their sound and showing up on MTV. So you've got Clapton doing the Color of Money soundtrack. You've got George Harrison. I mean, the first
Clapton and the Armani Mafia.
Yeah, like you have all of these musicians that that people know from something else who are now showing up on MTV and being introduced to a whole new generation and a whole new audience. And most of it is blues infused music. And so they died right before they could have maybe turned it back into their wheelhouse. And obviously you've got Greg. I mean, again, I didn't know who Greg Allman was when I was 9 years old, but I knew who he was because he had a video for I'm No Angel. So that's a good photo.
What do you think of this? You were talking about updating looks, right?
Yeah.
Okay. No. All right. I just wrote down MTV because I want to jump back to that.
So Dickie is literally dressed and looks like the guy, the drawing on the cover of the Marshall Tucker record Saddle Tramp.
Here's the one that really gets me. Okay, this is number one. I want you to notice who is all the way to the right.
Yeah.
So this is that little so the story going. Well, don't have that little stupid thing go up there. Yeah, the story.
So this is the part of this is I did not know this. So this is something that new content I learned.
And this is new to me, over the last couple of years, because there is a photograph. Let me see if the other one's from here. Yeah, here. So a version of this photograph has it's on an album cover from an era, right? Mm-hmm. So we've got the images, there. But in 70 and 82, about this same time, they're like, okay, we gotta do something different. And so they did add Chuck for a very brief period of time. Mm-hmm. And when the band splintered, Chuck, well, first Goldfleece went with Greg, and the Tollers. And then I think it was Alan who told me Goldfleece asked for more money from Greg, and Greg's like, man, nobody's here to see you play. So he didn't, and then David goes and plays with Betts Hall Lavelle Trucks. And so Chuck, sticks around. You were talking about, could they have hung on? This is something I will say that I kind of came to appreciate about them really is, conventional wisdom for us growing up, right, in the 80s, 90s, like, who's Greg Allman, this, that. To me, he had been a little bit of he's a joke, they were a joke. The failed concert in Stewart loomed large in my mind as their failure. That's not their failure, right? Mm-hmm. But my dad was like, yeah, it was a disaster, blah, blah, blah. So I remember kind of digging I'm No Angel, like the first time I heard it, it was like, oh, that, sounds different or interesting. I argue opposite on MTV that MTV killed Southern rock because Molly Hatchet and 38 Special were not super good looking dudes and did not, it didn't translate well to the video medium. ZZ Top did it with, a little cheekily, and they weren't good looking guys, but they hid behind those. They didn't show you how fugly they were, they just said, we're ugly. But I don't, and if you've do you remember the last time you watched the I'm No Angel video?
I mean, it's been many years, but I mean, yes.
Walk into a saloon door singing, big booby girls over there, hot chicks, leather, like every stereotype from, that era. And back to the whole thing. These were terrible artistic compromises by the Allman Brothers band that the records bear out were terrible decisions. I mean, even JMO's, the only thing different between Reach for the Sky and Brothers of the Road is that JMO's not on Brothers of the Road. And Brothers of the Road is appreciably worse to me than Reach for the Sky. Neither of them is each of them has a well-deserved shitty reputation.
So, yes, I think the other part is, so the pace of the songs, but let's just look at some of the song titles.
I should pull up my essay and see what I wrote.
Hell and High Water. I got a right to be wrong. Famous last words. Keep on keeping on.
The heat is on.
The heat is on. It's like, it's just dreadful.
The judgment.
Dreadful cliches. And I guess, which is painful considering how much we love both Forrest Richard Betts and Gregory Allman for their songwriting acumen. But mercy sakes, it's shocking. It's shocking to read the titles and then listening to the content and the music, and it lives down to what's on the paper. Dickey's over singing and yell singing on both records is really disconcerting. And makes it an even harder listen than what it was. We get disinterested, laconic, comatose Greg for much of it too. And it's whoever their A&R guy wasn't looking out for him at all.
And, you would guess, history tells me, form tells me that they don't have those people in-house, those people to, they were never that organized off the field as they were sort of, on the field,
sure.
Which cost them dearly in this entire era. The piece I do want to say, though, is, actually, I'll say two things, which, thank you. I'm glad you're reading. I didn't know you were reading as much. And I want you to disagree with me because those give me pain point. Those give me things to write later. First, to explain why I'm right, and then second, to explain why you might be right too. But somebody came back to me. Well, no, I found these pieces in Rolling Stone in like '83. Some Chuck quotes. I found some Bud Snyder quotes in an old Hit in the Note about these demos that they had made in prep for the third Arista record. And after what had happened with Brothers of the Road, Davis, they didn't like them. They didn't hear hits. And what Snyder said was some of those songs, one of them ended up on I'm No Angel and did become a very minor, like modern rock radio hit, which is not insignificant when you consider this. You know what I mean? Right? Like how do you miss that? I mean, never knew how much. All you have to do is listen to that version that I've got up on my YouTube channel at Long Live ABB. And listen to this one. And, Jimmy Hall, that is a yacht rock sax solo.
Yeah.
A genuine bad yacht rock sax solo. Like not even it's just nothing about it that I felt nothing. All it did was, let's just move the song along a little bit more. So, they do not morph well into other characters. The Grateful Dead, to their credit, did and have, but a whole bunch of artists. Was it you? Maybe you asked me, and there's a lot to think about these legacy rock artists and how they lived the '80s. I just reread the Leon Russell biography, which was. Have you read that yet? The Bill Janovitz book. Highly recommend.
Yeah, he said it was really good.
Fantastic. Very detailed. And one of the things that he really picks up on is Russell's increasing dependence on electronics and electronic drums, and his output in that era sounding increasingly more dated and worse because he was stuck on this, and he was in the book, it's a very early pioneer in all of it. He was also the earliest adopter. So he would like buy things when it was 100,000 and it would be 25,000 at the end of the year kind of shit,
Yeah,
you know?
sure. Yeah, I mean, ZZ Top is really the only ones that adopted all of that stuff and turned it into platinum. Why
Pink
did
Floyd survived it.
Yeah,
Clapton, you know,
yeah.
got back in normal clothes again. You know, Dire Straits, you know, Knopfler didn't wear his Armani anymore, you know.
Why didn't BHLT turn into anything?
Okay, so the first thing I wanted to say was, you know, I applaud the Allman Brothers for breaking up when they did, because they had some good material. They were in a record company contract that was clearly not going to work, right? That's true. They owed Clive Davis money and a record. But they stuck to their guns artistically and said, we're going to go do our own thing instead of try to keep a band going. We're going to ride out the 80s, which is essentially what they did. That's how Lavelle Trucks. I bet you could say the same thing. They were way ahead of their time.
Mm-hmm.
Fiddle, sax, keyboards, Dickie Betts, the Freight Train, you know, like there's remnants of the, you know, like the early 90s Allman Brothers, you know, how Dickie led that charge. And then there's remnants of Frog Wings in there. And there's remnants of Sea Level in there. It wasn't their time, you know. They ended up, I think, because they couldn't break through with those two records and they were particularly bad. I think it just ruined their chances artistically for good, you know, or at least for their. And they were wise enough to step back. I think that is like, we're not going to keep pushing this, you know.
Yeah. So they never made a record. And
no.
And did they do any studio recording at all, or?
I don't know. I do know that No One to Run With is a Betts Hall Lavelle Trucks song written by the guy, John Prescia. Dickie shares a songwriting credit with him because apparently while they were recording Where It All Begins, a BHLT tape gets played. They were going to record Leopard Skin Pillbox Hat for Where It All Begins, and they were working on it. That ended up being a Frog Wings song. That was in that first iteration of Frog Wings, but they end up listening to a BHLT tape and hear No One to Run With. And apparently Dickie goes and calls Presty and goes, hey, you remember that song we wrote, No One to Run With? And John's like, I remember the song I wrote, No One to Run With. And Dickie said, well, you remember that song we wrote, No One to Run With? Because we're about to cut an album. And, you know, just like Steve Alaimo, 100% of nothing's nothing.
That's right.
You know?
Yeah.
You know, you get a song on Eat a Peach, or you sit on your terrible demo that you recorded your vocals over. You know?
That's funny.
So where are you with time, man?
I got time.
All right, cool. Let's you got what keep going. This is fucking blast.
So you brought up, I mean, you mentioned it. So you are turning up some really cool stuff that you get sent by your fans or subscribers, but you turned up a complete American music show that I had never heard, which I think is maybe the only second one that is the full show. I mean, there's bits and pieces of some that are out there, but that's the only one I've seen that is the full 3 sets.
And it's right. So 12/11/74, Santa Monica. It's Dickie's birthday. He gets on there and he goes, it's my birthday and I'm drunk and I don't give a fuck, or I don't give a shit. I can't remember which he said, because it's my birthday and I'm drunk. Oh, and if you don't like it, I don't give a fuck or something. And then so this one was, you know, I have been, and I will always stand for the 12/14/74 Winterland, in memory of Elizabeth Reed, psychedelic Western swing masterpiece. Jeff, I couldn't tell you how many hundreds of times I've listened to it, like on road trips, sitting down. It was part of my listening retinue when I wrote my dissertation. and then of course Vassar, and it's got that fiddle. Anyway, and so I brag on it all the time. And this guy, I wish I could find him because I want to tag him. I forget who sent it to me, but he goes, I've got this show and it's really good. And I was like, and eventually he sent it to me and I was doing other stuff. And, one of these days someone's going to shut me down like they did on Facebook, but they, but I was like, forget it. Like, this is just sitting here. Like, people will enjoy this. I'm just going to put it out there and let the world, and they need to hear it because, I forgot about the paper, you did a conference paper on this tour.
Was going to fail an aborted effort. But I was going to talk about that too. So,
but it is such, the American Music Show tour itself for guys like us, right? And like you said, it's a 3-set show that's got, Dickie said, I wanted to show, kind of the evolution of American music. And, this is what I brought to it because it kind of ending with Jessica and Liz Reed and those sorts of things. So that has been super cool, like things have shaken out and, fellow travelers, man. I mean, I think that's, we are in the business. We've been in the business of this in museums for a long time, wherever we are and whatever we do, however we collect.
The show was a reminder, and again, I mean, same thing about Winterland, it was a reminder of a handful of things. The biggest one I'll say for last, but the first thing is how, in the hands of anybody else, how the notion of I'm going to create a concert tour that's basically my interpretation of American music. I'm going to call it the American Music Show. I'm going to put on this show. And for them, and now it wasn't as bonkers as Greg's tour, and that's a whole other conversation. But it's this notion of it in the wrong hands, it could be the most conceited, arrogant thing that, I mean, if your friend Rod Stewart would do something like that, right? Where it's like, well, where do you get off saying that?
Who are you
to just decide? And then, but Dickie puts together this band of hot players from a variety of different, you've got Conway Twitty's pedal steel player, you've got Joe Arnold, who is, was at Stax, was at Muscle Shoals. You've got an R&B horn player. You've got the Poindexters that are doing Florida bluegrass, and then you've got all these other great players that can do the what Dickie wants to do and contemporize the Allman sound and his solo record sound. And he puts it all together and arranges the show in such a way that takes you on this journey. And like you said, ends so perfectly. It ends so perfectly with just this Liz Reed, where it's like, this is where it all comes together. And it's jazz, it's bluegrass, it's Texas, it's swing, it's Western swing, it's rock and roll, it's psychedelia, it's blues. It's all of this rolled into one. And like, for them to pull that off and for it to just faceplant in the way that it did and not be as successful as it should have been is one of the greatest missed opportunities and shames of the Allman Brothers story, because I think it's what eventually sets the course for the demise.
What happens
in 75 into 76?
That's
because it is very much and Alan was written about this, and it's true. It's just, you send the two guys out on the road to play behind their solo records, and one goes like this and one goes like this, and the one that goes like this isn't breaking any new ground. He's basically, his is a love letter to the music that
his influences.
Yeah. And it's a fine show. I got no quarrel with it. But is it breaking new ground? Is it saying anything different? Is it adding anything to the catalog or the lexicon or whatever musically?
I'm going to argue yes, but not. It was the ambition the ambition Dickie had is worth. I'm with you. This is thank you. This is something I'm gonna play around with. Keep going, and then I have a point.
But then you create the bad. I mean, again, the money, the cocaine, whatever. The booze, what was maybe a friendly competition struggle between Dickie and Greg. I think Dickie had pretty much won that struggle by the end of 1973 because it clearly was Dickie's band, in my opinion. And then you go in, they're riding high, and you go into 74, and we're like, we got money, we got power, we got name, we got all this stuff. So we're going to do this and we're going to do this. And I think it did poison the well in so many ways. And it just, you couldn't, once all of that riding high of 73 goes away, they were never going to recapture it again. And that's evident to me in the stuff that you've written, that Alan's written and talked about forever.
And the musical output. I mean, from Brothers and Sisters, which is the last Allman Brothers album I listened to front to back without a single skip. Like that's, I started to write that into that essay I wrote to sort of explain like, how does it happen? Well, the first album it happened to is Win, Lose or Draw. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll go back to something I've talked with Alan about before. I'll probably talk to him about again. One of the things Alan really got close to was like Watkins Glen, and what honestly I would say a failure on Walden's part to get that recorded and filmed. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like he's threatening to pull the band at last minute to get an extra 100,000. What?
So that is a great point because that emphasizes, I think, what we already talked about. One of the greatest issues in this band is the short-sightedness,
penny wise and pound foolish
of the decision-making process. Continue.
Yeah, and so like this on Dickie's part, right? Total utter failure of management. Mm-hmm. On that part to promote it the way it should have been. I'll give you one. I think I've sent this to you before. I remember the California tour, the one where the Dickie does the Winterland and the Santa Monica show we're just talking about. Greg played first, mm-hmm. and I think it was his second solo tour. It wasn't even the laid back tour. Greg played like a month before Dickie. Mm-hmm. You're saturating the market there, guys, with your Allman dollars. You just split it and you favored the one guy. Mm-hmm. Now, Dickie's concept was very ambitious. Dickie was not a musical director like Leon Russell that could have harnessed it a little bit better right out of the chute. It was a little bit shambolic, as I understand, out the gate. Mm-hmm. Poor attendance bothered him tremendously. And you get to Mr. Batts and the fact that he was in a band named after Allman and was the creative director and leader for 30 mm-hmm. years, but his name wasn't on the band. And then, Willie Perkins claims he changed his name to Richard, and that confused people. I don't think that helped.
No, and that's one thing I was just going to say too. Is like the missed opportunity and the disservice. It's sort of like, again, the record company has to step in and just say no.
The manager, it's his job.
It's his job
to fulfill the artist's artistic, to help the art, like get to their artistic vision. I mean, he's raising money for American Indians in the 70s. Like, this is not hard. Just throw some attention to it. And, and he was a rock and roller who looked cool as shit. And when he wore, and was very earnest about it, mm-hmm. That is, Highway Call, it's hard to say, like, what's the first, like, Americana record, right? Is it the Motel Shot? Is it Will a Circle Be Unbroken or something? Is it earlier? Is it like
Burrito Brothers?
I was about to go earlier than that and say Sweetheart of the Rodeo,
Yeah.
but where do you really point it out, right? Is, and, the fact that I thought about this yesterday, right? Like the Vassar Clements is the country picker, at Stone Country Picker, as I quoted Dickie saying yesterday. Stoned.
Yeah.
He bridged that gap from Bill Monroe. I had to look it up again to make sure I was right, that it was Monroe and not Flatt and Scruggs. From Bill Monroe to Nitty Gritty Dirt Band to Garcia and then Dickie Betts.
Yeah.
And so right there you have this and Will the Circle Be Unbroken was was sold. I think it did really well, like right out of the gate, right?
Yeah,
it might have been slow, but it was a great record that got a lot of attention. Highway Call fits right there. We've talked about this before. The Allmans, lack of any business sense as an entity. It goes back to when I read that piece. I still can't find it, but that they said that the Dead signed up for a press clipping service in like 1965.
I reference that a lot, just because I think it's brilliant. It's just so.
I was about to say the same thing, right? Like that'll tell you. Yeah. I mean, artistically, they could weather the 80s differently. It's not their best material. I don't care if I can't listen to it. But their record, they sold well. I looked that up too, just in comparison to this Allman era. But, when they took that break, and they had to, right? Because Dwayne died. They finish Eat a Peach. They go on the greatest tour in history. Barry dies. They finish Brothers and Sisters. They become the biggest band in the country. And they're still dealing with PTSD from 2 years earlier and the PTSD of becoming famous. I don't know what it's like to be famous, right? But I understand that it is a disorienting experience, and to have it while you're drunk and stoned and feeling depressed, and you can't work, you can't even phrase those things, but you can go out and write a song. People say you're no good. I wouldn't cut you loose, baby, if I could, right? Like that's how they're expressing it. So like the break happens in 73. What did the Dead go 9 years before their first break? I'm going back to the Dead conversation all of a sudden, right? 65 to 74. So the Allmans make their first and basically, it's not a true break, I guess, but they take a 2-year break, 5 years in, at the peak of their success. They release, Greg releases a record and Dickie does that sound nothing like the Allman Brothers. And then Greg meets Cher. And I want to say this. I want to say this for sure.
I will not take Faces slander, and I will not take Cher slander.
I was about to say, I got nothing. I have no issues. I have no issues at all. Those two, I have no doubt in my mind, they were truly in love. Because they both went to great efforts to stay together. She was, stuck with him through a whole bunch of down times,
Yeah.
So no, I mean, you don't blame Cher, and that's what JMO said in that article. That's another one I unearthed was a piece after, like where it was sort of preface. It was a promo for the Win, Lose or Draw, where JMO's like, man, she's been having hits since I was a kid. Love affairs can wait. Like he's blaming Greg, for choosing to be out there. They're not blaming, Cher. And like Paul never blamed Yoko. Paul understood that his partner was in love. The way his partner had been in love with him up until that very point, and learned very quickly he had to accept that and find his own, which Paul's my guy, but by the same token, this is how this works, right? Greg can't be bothered to come back to record. They're not a great studio band, and they, Butch always says they choke the life out of High Falls. 100% disagree. This is a time when an artist doesn't have enough distance from the creation of his work to maybe truly assess how just brilliant that composition is and the take. But, there's times when JMO's not there. There's times when Greg's not, like that's not an Allman Brothers album. It sounds like half of a partial Great Southern album with some kind of unfinished Greg tracks because they didn't really, when Can't Lose What You Never Had. High Files.
I like Nevertheless, and I like Sweet Mama too.
Okay.
But...
Nevertheless was my surprise. Like, okay, this is better than I thought. Win, lose or draw. He's got the Coke drip. And that's one of the ones that Steve calls one of Greg's unpolished gems. And Eric Church's version on the Greg tribute is the bomb with Jack Pearson. But Nevertheless is a good song. I like Sweet Mama just right. I think it could be so much better. It could have been, it sounds like a great Southern track instead of an Allman Brothers track,
Yeah. Again, I think it's another missed opportunity. It's also just record company disservice too. In so many ways. I mean, it's the album covers. I mean, we've talked about, Alan wrote about this extensively. The album cover's terrible. Band's not anywhere on it.
The name isn't even on it. They had to add a sticker.
Yeah. All of it is it's just so half-assed. And I think the PTSD and the not slowing down and substances and relationships and money and all of that stuff, it's like it had to crater, right? It's just that because it just wasn't sustainable. It just is, to kind of bring us back to where we started. It's just that it's a shame that the reclamation took so long to get to where it should have been. And again, even the first reunion tour and the Seven Turns record, I'll argue that it didn't hit its stride until Johnny Neal departed and, till 91 with Shades of Two Worlds and Warren sort of better material, but also Warren sort of stepping up and becoming comfortable in that number 2 slot.
Shades of Two were, so that's a real, I was thinking about, it's funny, as you were unfolding your tale, I was like, they had this, like, basically they go dormant 75, if you will. They have this tiny little thing in 79 and then go dormant for a long time. And then, they come out 89 and really the Dreams box set, the triumph of the tour for them, right? They felt like they got back to it. They were playing their own music, the chance to record an album their own way, Seven Turns. The weakest of the three, in my opinion, but does have some of the best songs on it. True Gravity turned into something altogether different. Seven Turns, all-timer. Gambler's Roll should have gotten played a lot more.
Yeah, it's a great blues song.
One of their best slow blues originals, ranks up there with Desdemona. So also Haynes co-write. I totally agree with you too about Johnny Neal. Like, that wasn't a great fit. It took some time. Seven Turns to me is their last true Southern rock record. So I'll say that on the record now. It has a lot more similarities to Enlightened Rogues than it does Shades of Two Worlds or the psychedelia. The one came back differently with Shades of Two Worlds going forward. For the reasons that you said. They always benefited best when they let the new people contribute the way that they can best, and they allowed that in this case. The drummers picked the bass players is what I know. So Woody was the drummer's choice ultimately. Last time it was right. Dickie brings in his guitarist and his bass player, and that became Dickie's bass player. With Gold Fleece, right? So, and you're right. Like, they had a real weird sort of reclamation thing that they earned. The hard way. They reclaimed where they had been. They disavowed those Arista records. when Midnight Riders came out, what's his name?
Scott
Scott
Freeman.
Freeman's book, which is one of my favorite. I'm actually pulled it out to reread about this era. Like I remember he told me in an email one time that when he pitched the book, somebody said nobody wants to. People down there don't read about Southerners, right? Like that was the sort of mindset. Let's say he did a lot of interviews in the mid '80s. One of the things I love about his book is that he the interviews that he did were in this period we're talking about between 82 and 89. Some of his best interviews where the band was very like, man, I don't know, it's all over again. We just blew it. Did we just do that again? But I think that, the piece that is sort of missing from that for the puzzle for me was that, there was some intentionality behind their decisions to step back in 82, 83. They tried to do a few things. And right, I've learned a lot of this from you, I got to say, just being your friend over the years and how you approach music, how you think about music. You're like me, where you find a name on a liner note, like, okay, where's that going? Mm-hmm. That's going to teach me, to go somewhere. But I began to, excuse me, as I think about the Allman Brothers, like the longevity of a career, and appreciate mid-period records, right? Mm-hmm. Appreciate that people, like Leon Russell put out that record with with Elton John, for example. Those types are certainly special, but Greg's Low Country Blues or any of these, like there's a gem in there somewhere, mm-hmm. right? That a producer is thinking about song selection and arrangement that might fit an artist really well. Like mm-hmm. if I could sit down with Susan Tedeschi, I'd be like, I think you should cover Patty Griffin's Up to the Mountain about MLK.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Like if I had Lamar Williams Jr., I'd be like, okay, come here. I've got an arrangement I do of Come and Go Blues that I want you to, I would record because I think you mm-hmm. would kill it, So digging into, finding those gems of those albums. I posted about Derek a few, months ago. I did a real deep dive in his records because I've seen him live so many times. I've listened to his live material so much. Sometimes you forget that he stopped and said, I'm going to record this one for posterity. Mm-hmm. This is the one most people are going to find when they come to me, Mm-hmm. And I think we should, as not consumers, but as fellow travelers, as participants in the music exchange, right? But even though we're mostly, receiving it, I think we should honor that commitment, that they've done that. So like, it's good to listen to Reach for the Sky and Brothers of the Road.
In conclusion,
but I'm just going to tell you, I'm just going to tell you don't have to, because I've done the work for you.
There you go. That was really well said, Bob. I think what's to sort of put a bow on everything, it's very interesting. And I think this is the thing that, Harvey and I talk about Panic a lot, and I've said this I don't know how many times, is that in order to truly love something, you can't see it as infallible, and you can't see it as perfect, because if you do, you've got the rose-colored glasses, whatever metaphor or cliche you want to use. And I think that for me, the Arista records are the low-hanging fruit that you can just discard. The true sort of love of this band comes from you being critical, your leave my every hungry black-hearted woman at home criticisms that you've levied over the years. And obviously there's quibbles or things that you can pick apart for studio records. I mean, obviously Phil Maurice is infallible, but
it's not.
It's not
Fade
totally
outs.
infallible.
Fade outs. Fade
Fade
outs.
out. Fade
That's
outs.
it. That's it. Other than that, it's infallible. Fade outs.
But and on down the road, because I think, and it's not just, well, they can do better. I know that they can do better. How come they're not doing better? It's not that. It's just like you viewing, having the context available for every bit of art that you're consuming helps you understand why the artist or the musician was doing what they were doing at that particular time. And so it helps you understand it. So again, I think the Arista stuff is at its core unlistenable. And I think that's what makes this such an interesting thing, because I totally agree with you that you can usually find something on a record. It's pretty rare if I get a record from an artist that's like, I think heard a single of his one time and it was really great, but I found this LP, and then you get it and you're like, bad.
Right. There's always something lying between the grooves that'll work. I agree.
And so, but that's what makes these two records so inherently interesting to think about and to talk about, is that you try and it's not there. And I think it would be really interesting to do something with Dwayne Betts, for example, and just be like, okay, Dwayne, ask him this question. When is the last time you listened to these records? And what do you think about when you hear your dad play these records? Not Warren and not Derek, but Dwayne, because I'm putting Dwayne at the forefront of the torch bearing for the Allman Brothers at the moment.
Yeah.
And because I mean, I hope to see Allman Betts Family Revival with Amanda Shires at some point. I don't know if it'll ever happen again, and then I can talk more intelligently about it. But it would be interesting for me for him to listen to it in what he hears and what he knows, as opposed to just from the fan perspective. Because again, it is very much there's an instrumental. There's got to be something there, and maybe, but it's still too fast. And so that's what again.
Two terrible album covers as well.
Oh, the artwork is just atrocious. But to stop prattling on, I think that it's one of the rare instances for any of the bands that I like or love that I could just say it's not worth your time.
They met extremely low. They exceeded extremely low expectations, I did listen twice through to Reach for the Sky just to make sure I didn't miss anything, good. I want to circle back to your point about perfection and those things. One of the key moments in my journey from turning my dissertation into the book, Play All Night, Dwayne Allman and the Journey to Fillmore East, is when I made the pivot from Dwayne is the greatest thing ever, which is what the dissertation was, to how do we know who Dwayne Allman is as an artist? How do we know what his artistic vision is? And how do we know if he succeeded, right? Which is the whole thesis of the book. And that was Fillmore East. And I struggled, right? Because Dreams is not on Fillmore East. In fact, they didn't play Dreams over that weekend. And you said to me one time, Bob, just because they didn't play your favorite song doesn't make it not a great album. And I'm going to say, I fully expected you to say, yeah, man, that album is incomplete without, So I had to kind of take that little nugget you gave me, who couldn't even tell you it had to have been after dissertation and, pre-book, obviously, because I was making a move. So let's say 2020, 2021. Couldn't tell you when it was, how we had the conversation. One of your casual comments you threw out there. And then I had to say, okay, well, why is that? And you know what it is? I determined, they didn't record Dreams that weekend because he was pretty happy with that take from that first record. They had things they had to record, so then I had to put my mind in the context of, okay, an album. single record, double record, like, and that allowed me to sort of, that little comment was a key point for me to push forward. My complaint about the record, and that's, what I said is I hate the fade outs because it breaks up the consistency of the listen. And my first real contact with that record was Fillmore Concerts, which was a pastiche that sounded like a 2.5 hour Allman Brothers show, and more or less was, all to say though, right? Any piece of art is the artist scratching his or her own itch. For me, if it doesn't resonate, it's on me. That's that's if an artist is doing things for their true intent instead of maybe for the marketplace or something else. I would imagine back to Arista and this or that, like the Allman Brothers failed in that regard in a big way because they compromised artistically, even if they were pinched to do it. And organic bands don't do well with that. Let's throw another one in there for another discussion. But if the Deads worked because it was the Deads' organic attempt to add some new stuff to their sound, Allman's didn't work because it was their record company's attempt to add some new stuff to their sound.
Sure. It's just, it will never. It's one of the things about the Dead I've just grown to appreciate over the years. And it's not something that it makes me listen to that era of music more, but it's sort of every time I hear Shakedown Street, when I'm listening to a show, it's just sort of this reminder. It's like, God, these guys understood this.
Yeah, I'll say that, that was another piece of writing, Play All Night. That was my friend Spencer who wrote at one point. He goes, don't be afraid to explore the Dead Allman connection. Yeah. I kind of approached it a bit of a fanboy saying, with a little bit of the little brother syndrome that Allman Brother fans had in that era with Garcia becoming God again. And, with I Will Get By, Touch of Grey being on MTV, being that massive hit, the Allmans were broken up at that point. And, but to say like, yeah, those guys, that band, like they invented what the Allman Brothers did. And then the best thing they did is they had an infrastructure around them that the Allmans did not have. And I, musically, philosophically, spiritually, culturally, pretty, both of them equally significant in their respective areas and one of one,
I know we're digressing, but did the Allmans have a mailing list? And like, did there a fan club or anything that you could?
They did have a fan club.
Get on the mailing list and get tour dates in the mail or anything like that, and how to get tickets or any of that stuff like the Dead did.
I don't think they had the mailing list like Dead Freaks Unite kind of stuff. I mean, there's nothing in the records, right? But I'm talking to TY tomorrow, so I'll ask him if he knows anything about that from his time in Macon.
Yeah, it would be really interesting. That's just the.
I have. So I ordered the Win, Lose or Draw tour book from somebody on eBay, and he included six photographs from a fan club mailer. So they've gone out on my socials over time. So, all right. Hey man, well, let's do this again. This was fantastic. That was a blast. It'll go take some time to edit. I'll get something edited together and send over to you whenever.
Well, it'll be in my writer. I prefer unedited conversations.
That's fine. That's fine too. I just want to make sure.
Kidding.
I just want to make sure we don't go too far, but I do want to clean up, see how everything looks. And I'm a couple behind, but let's schedule this again before too long.
Sounds good. Thank you.